Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chad Show. Actually, this is episode numero uno of the Chad Show. It's the Arnold is numero uno of the Chad Show. And my guest today is Brad Borland, somebody who I've met a long time ago and have been associated with for, you know, teaching in the collegiate level at probably the last 10 or 11 years. And I invited him on as the first guest to kind of, we're going to work out all of the wrinkles and the kinks of this. And, but also, like I said, since, we brainstormed this idea and it finally came to fruition, and I said, well, you're going to be my first guest. It's only natural. So I can introduce you, but I'd rather you just introduce yourself.
Oh man, I tell you, I'm flattered that this is the first episode and I've been invited on, and I'm still waiting on my gift bag in the mail that you said you'd send. I think something like that, some big, huge, anyway,
Just cash.
a gift card. But no, no, man, I appreciate it. It's been great, and like you said, we've known each other a while now, and kind of we've been through some ups and downs over the years together, and you, of course, you know my past, and of course, we both got our master's degrees and things like that, and in kinesiology, and of course, I the boring bio part here, but I did over 20 years in the Air National Guard, and during that time. Actually, this is one of the highlights on my website. Also, is I highlight kind of like being a cancer survivor for those who, have questions or concerns about if those are going through treatment, and or their after treatment, and how they can kind of improve their lives, health and fitness and things like that. So, um, so that's always been kind of near and dear to me, and you know. Just living the health and fitness lifestyle, and trying to help as many people out there as I possibly can. So hopefully we'll maybe solve some problems today.
Yeah, no, I want to add to that, kind of piggyback that. I first met you or knew of you through a mutual friend, and he told me your story. Now this is basically not pre-internet, but pre-Google, right? So, and told me your story about how you are, it was something I never knew existed at the time, is the sport of bodybuilding, but not just bodybuilding, but natural bodybuilding. The more strict and it's an admirable sport, but I was basically told the story of you, not only being interested in competing in natural bodybuilding before cancer, but also after. And I found that real impressive, especially with, at the time I was a college student and I was learning about the human body, and it's, not you, as far as limitations go to the human body and what you can and can't do. And you basically pushed the limit of that. Do you want to kind of, you have probably a more interesting description of the sport of natural bodybuilding than I do, or that I could provide. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
But yeah, it's one of those things that I was always a fan of bodybuilding. Of course, I as a kid, like all probably kids our generation, watched Pump and Iron, and you saw Arnold training and competing and all these things. And back then, when I first got in, you had your champions and Mr. Olympia and Mr. Whatever back then. And so, but at that time, and still today, but I don't compete today or anything like that. But I wasn't really willing to do drugs, different pharmaceuticals to get enhanced and all that good stuff. That was just one of the things, and that was just a personal decision. And I still respected the guys, the professionals, and everything that are at the pro level, but I wanted to kind of find a way to compete um, on my level, and I didn't have an aspiration or anything to be a Mr. Olympia. So, but I did find a lot of natural drug-free organizations back then, They're probably not as popular today as they used to be back then. There was sort of this explosion of different federations and everything back then. So I was very lucky on the timing of kind of entering into drug-free bodybuilding when those organizations really were ramping up, and it was sort of at the startup of a lot of these. So very lucky in that respect. A lot of competitions nationwide were happening, and I traveled here and there and did a lot of shows, and really enjoyed it. But at the back of my head, I knew that um, I knew that I'm not going to be like a big Ronnie Coleman or anything like that. So or anywhere near that level. So um, I did, it is what it is, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just kind of stay in my wheelhouse, and I made it a point to sort of spread the word of natural bodybuilding too, because I would see people, like, for example, when I was teaching at higher ed, and I'd be around a lot of students, and I'd see some students who just have some questions about training and fitness and all these things, and I would see some people that had like a really good potential, uh, and they were interested in competing. So I would kind of try to sway them in the natural direction of things. So um, it wasn't like some sort of doctrine I was running around on, but it was just something I wanted to introduce people, because a lot of people I did approach about it, they had no idea natural bodybuilding was a thing. Like, they just saw the big guys on TV or YouTube or something, and they thought that was it. And I was like, no, 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 no. There's a more grounded, realistic way to compete. If you just want to compete, why not? So, and then you mentioned, competing after cancer, and um, actually used um, competition as a tool to help me recover, because during treatment, um, you're just trying to get through treatment, right? Chemotherapy. I did like 9 months of chemotherapy, and
Mhm.
all that stuff, and it was rough. And but at the back of my head, I knew, I kind of had that vision of like, I'm going to compete one day. I just kind of held tight to that. That wasn't the only thing that got me through treatment, but it was a great goal, and it was a great sort of vision to keep at the forefront. And like I said, I kind of used it. And to be honest, when I came back to compete a few more times after treatment, a little bit different mindset. It wasn't like, I got to win, I got to win, I got to win. It was more like, I'm just going to compete again and just see if I can do this. So um,
Yeah.
they kind of gonna go hand in hand a little bit.
It's funny that yeah, and you actually indirectly, without even knowing it, helped me, because through another mutual friend, I was always interested in the sport of bodybuilding, and I thought about competing, and it didn't get much farther than me thinking about competing. I like training, and I like dieting, and I like improving and changing or I guess you can say reinventing myself, right? The changing my body and things like that. But I never really had aspirations to compete. But I, what's crazy is everybody knows that asks about a diet or this, especially now in today's world. What diet are you using? There's the TB12 method. There's the carnivore diet. There's the keto diet. Well, actually, without even knowing it, I used the Brad diet, to get in shape numerous times throughout my time. And I basically got it secondhand, and it was handwritten. It wasn't printed off of the internet or anything like that. And what I liked about it and what worked about it for me is that it was simple. It was simple. It didn't say, well, how you count your macros, this or that. It was just, hey, look, this is what you eat. This is 6 meals. This is what you eat for each of them. And I followed that to a T for every day for months, and it worked wonders.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that
and
is.
what's funny is, like, and through our mutual friend that we know. I mean, he used the diet to compete. I used the diet to get into. I was pretty close to competition shape. I just didn't want to compete. It wasn't really my
Yeah.
thing. But and then his mutual friend, he used that diet too to compete, and he said, "Where did you get it from?" We got it from Brad. So,
I'm
yeah,
very
another thing I
familiar.
also wanted to mention in your bio is that you're also a veteran too, for the Air National Guard, and with a deployment too. And if you want to briefly talk about that, and also health and fitness, as far as veterans go, or like how to, you know, stay in shape when not really when you're deployed, but like with the military or the veteran lifestyle.
Yeah, like I got a couple deployments under my belt and a lot of activations and everything, but one in particular was going to Afghanistan in 1 year, and actually, everything ties together. Um, it's interesting because uh, about a month, a little over a month after I came back from deployment, I got diagnosed with cancer. So everything's kind of tied up together. But uh, yeah, deployments, they're stressful, and they're sort of all consuming. Anybody that's been deployed out there knows that really, really well. And it's tough, it depends on what type of deployment you're on, and whether you're out in the field the whole time or not, or on a sparse base somewhere and living in a tent, that kind of thing. And so you have to kind of make do, and there, of course, there are ways. There's a lot of guys. Most guys on deployment would, if they did work out, they would go out and run. That's sort of like the default. Everybody goes out and jogs, and I would go to the workout tent, the weight tent, and lift weights and try to drag some of my buddies along with me. But yeah, well, but I think in those stressful situations, that I think, of course, you can make a little progress, but I think mentally you have to be comfortable with maintaining what you have on a deployment or any kind of high stressful situation. I mean, like, if you're, even if it's something like exam week, finals week for school, or going through something very stressful at the job, family life, I think I think it's wise, maybe, is my opinion, to just sort of give yourself that maintenance mentality and saying, okay, I'm not going to like move mountains here or do any PRs or, you know, uh, break the mold here, but I'm going to stay consistent. I'm going to keep going. Might have to reduce that down maybe from 5 days a week to 3 days a week for a while, but you're consistent. And I think that's the most, consistency is very underrated as far as a
Hmm.
tool, and whether you want to get stronger, build muscle, lose fat, those kinds of things. So I know it sounds basic, it sounds simple, but I try very, very hard to keep things simple.
Yeah, and yeah, to actually to act the actions, right? Those are the things that are difficult, but the concepts are simple.
Hmm.
It just seems like, I guess it seems like they shouldn't be, right? Um, but anyway, I know you like talking about yourself probably just as much as I like talking about myself, and I have a podcast here that's named after me, but it's anything but. This is a
Yeah, for those out there, that's
you know
sarcasm.
my background. Yeah. What's funny is that, just to kind of wrap things up about the introduction, right? And as crazy as that, I found myself years later teaching at the university level, and I heard a familiar voice, speaking to a colleague that was next door, and I'm like, I know that voice. I know the voice. So I went. Oh, this is the very beginning. Right? I went over there and said, "Oh man, I know you, and I remember your voice." And that 10 years of having that job and teaching there, and working with colleagues and having you with your regular, I believe it was Tuesday and Thursday visits. It was amazing. It was just bouncing ideas off of each other, whether it's talking about academia, but whether it's just letting off steam and talking about 80s movies, which we're both a
Yeah.
fan of, right? Or you know
No,
anything.
you're
And
absolutely right.
it was just
It
funny, and it
was.
made.
I was gonna say it was great because when I first started teaching there, everybody's kind of in their little holes, and I was kind of like the I was bouncing around everywhere, and I was like, I'm gonna go pop my head in some places here, you know. So, but no, it was
Yeah, you
great.
found this
Like,
pocket of humanity, you know?
yeah, I can honestly say that that was a really I look back on that time really fondly. I loved teaching, and I loved talking with you and some of the other guys and girls there, um, and just like you said, just talking about everything under the sun, and even even if we talked about some subjects that we disagreed on, and it's fine, we were very mutual and respectful and all that good stuff, and so I think that's
And just about family too.
yeah, yeah, a lot of
You
parallels,
know,
and so yeah,
yeah, you're married, you have a son.
yeah,
I'm married, I have a son, and just
right,
going through that, and
yeah.
just the
You
absolute
play
joy of
you I was gonna say you play golf, but I live at a country club golf course, so I don't play golf though.
I am in like a believe it or not, I'm in a like a it's a self-imposed golf celibacy. I guess I'll call it that. It's like I've just kind of taking a break and wiping the slate clean. I still watch it a little bit, and
Well,
I just don't
but
play
I would
anymore, and
think
that's
though, and also you're training for a marathon, right? You have a marathon coming up, and right,
yeah, if that's what you call it. Look, no matter what level of fitness I am in right now, it's still next week. That's it,
yeah.
and I'm stressing out. That's why it's not
Now remind
nervous
me
being in front of a camera. It's nervous.
where is it again? Remind me where's your marathon? And
So yeah, it's in Philadelphia,
okay,
and look, for me, it's just as bodybuilding was to you. That's what running. I guess it still is. I'm about to close that chapter in my life because I
mm,
have to physically, but running saved my life a long time ago, and I say that it's kind of tongue in cheek because it wasn't like there was a clear adversity that was potential harm to my life, except I guess you can say obesity, right? Which is I was an obese kid growing up, and I didn't know about fitness as much, but and tying it into Philadelphia and why I picked Philadelphia was because, anyway, I ran, um, I got pretty decent at distance running pretty quickly, and I started just to lose weight, and I went from almost 250 pounds in high school to within a few months, I just started running, and I got down to, I lost almost 80 pounds. And I said, well, I'm going to turn this into something I never knew about. I never knew about the sport of cross country and track. And that turned into being on a team in high school. And then
mm,
for a short time in college. And so off and on, running's always been there. I've always been fascinated with the sport. I've always been fascinated with the athletes. And now, because of I get orthopedic health problems, I have a really bad knee, and had a few surgeries, and I always had that goal. I want to run a marathon, and dude, life is moving fast, and I'm getting older, and I feel it. And I just picked a marathon, and this is a long story, I know, but
no,
I picked Philly because I'm a huge fan of the movie Rocky,
yeah,
and I know that's cliche, but I'm a huge fan of Stallone too. Being a fan of '80s movies, but I know Rocky's a '70s movie, and there's a story behind that. I was raised by my grandparents, and we had you know ATV in the house, and my grandmother wasn't who I call my mom. She was not the sweet little old lady that watched Price is Right or the stories, right? The Young and the Restless. She loved action movies. She was Sylvester Stallone's biggest fan,
yeah.
and that poured over to me. You're not gonna like this. She wasn't a big fan of Arnold, but I was. I had to watch it I had to watch his movies in secret though.
Yeah.
And But anyway, long story short, I am planning on running the Philly Marathon next Sunday, and I say planning on. I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna run. I'm gonna finish it, and I am going to take my running shoes off after the race, and I am not gonna run again. That's it. I'm gonna
Wow.
basically retire my story of about running is gonna end there, and I'm gonna be
Mhm.
happy with closing that chapter because it's too painful to keep
Yeah.
training. So that's it. At 41 years old, that's it. No more running, but I'm still gonna watch it. Still gonna be a fan. Still
Yeah.
gonna do everything I can to support that community. But anyway, let's get into this. So we
Well,
kind of brainstorm about.
I wanted to ask you real quick though, you kind of touched on
Mhm,
something. I wonder if, we talk about like you had mentioned like, simplified diets and written down on paper and training and everything and not trying to complicate things and even with your running at a young age, that was just something that you did. Of course, your probably goal was to lose weight, but at the same time, it's probably producing all kinds of endorphins, and your mental health was great. Like it just improves everything. And no one, and just mentioning our age, but I'm wondering though if you know we grew up sort of more or less in a time without so much technology. So I'm wondering if a lot of these things that we did or are still doing that are ingrained in us are a product of that time period of not having social media at our fingertips, and not everybody's got a phone, not everybody, you know um it just we weren't as inundated back then with it as we are today. And I think I have this sneaky feeling that people like us, that we're kind of lucky that we grew up in a time before the big boom, so to speak, and where we're not, sometimes sometimes I'm disgusted by my phone. Like I'm trying to read something on and I just throw it down. I'm like, screw this. you know, I just can't. And yeah, but it's just a thought that popped in my head, if that
Yeah,
makes
I've
any sense.
jokingly said this to you before. We're dinosaurs.
But I'm a
I
happy
read two
dinosaur.
books. Yeah, yeah. Pre-asteroid or pre-comet or whatever it was. The But yeah, I before or while researching starting this podcast, I read two books about podcasts. Who does that anymore, especially about
Yeah.
that subject, right? But it's just, yeah, we're old school, man.
Yeah,
I went to the library. It wasn't on a
yeah.
screen. I went to the library to get two books
Library.
about podcasting,
Yeah.
and they had them.
Yeah,
The
and it's
stamps, there
just
were not many stamps on
yeah.
them.
Right, right. Right, right. Yeah, it's crazy because
If
it's because there's a lot of things that I'm not trying to be a luddite or some curmudgeon or anything like that. I love technology. I've written freelance for years, and I've had to use a lot of different programs. Um, submitting articles and posts and different things. I've written a lot of YouTube scripts for different websites, and um, so I'm very, I'm up on a lot of technology, and I like it, but it has to be a tool. It can't just be entertain. It just can't be solely entertainment. Sometimes, when it comes to that, a few things, yeah, but I don't want to sort of flood my life with a bunch of technology that's just for entertainment, and then all of a sudden my day's shot and I didn't get anything done. I think a lot of people today are kind of in that boat where they are so distracted with things. They're so distracted with so much content, so much information at their fingertips, and it's instant. And so they do get into the gym, or they do start a diet, and and it lasts for a day or, a week, and then they're on to something else. And like I said in the beginning, consistency is it's a foreign word today to a lot of people. It's like, well, how long you been working out? 2 weeks. Like, well, it's going to take longer than 2 weeks to see a change. So,
Yeah,
but I don't know. That was just my 2 cents on that whole
it's
subject.
Yeah, and that's, kind of going with that. Man, you want to Google whether it's like losing weight or diets or whatever in this world we live in. Like, you have to go scroll down past this ones that say sponsored, right? Because that's going to bug the ever living hell out of you when as far as the ads go, because that's going to latch on and you're going to see ads about not what is Ozempic, right? You're going to see
Yeah.
ads about all of
Well,
these different things, and it's like,
with Google though, the first thing you got to get past now is AI answer, then
yeah,
your 5
yeah.
sponsored links, and then all the way down to the bottom, you have something that you actually search for. So,
It's funny as I get just you being a writer, just like me, like you dabbling into writing, I get these advertisements for these jobs to, you know, especially since I advertise them. Look, I'm a teacher, and one day maybe I'd like to do that again. But now that the internet knows that maybe one day I'd like to do that again, they say, well, look, here's a job opening for a teaching job, but you're not teaching students, you're teaching AI.
mm,
And they have those jobs where you go and you have these questions and you answer it and you teach AI how to answer questions. And it's
wow.
pretty pretty
Yeah.
scary, but it's also not for it's not because, like, when you think AI, right, we're fans of 80s movies, right? The Terminator, right? It's like this thing that just grows out of control, which AI may or probably will do that, right? But at this point, it's not like that. It's giving you answers that people have given, and it's altering
Mm.
it a little bit, but we're still at the infancy of AI. We don't have a teenage AI system yet, you know.
Yeah, this somebody said, a writer, I think, said, AI is like the world's best plagiarist, you know, because it just takes information that's
Yeah.
already exists and it throws it together. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not, doesn't make any sense. So,
Yeah, it's something, man. I part of me is fascinated by it. I like it, just like I like, all the new shiny things, but also I like a pastime of mine is going on YouTube and watching videos of muscle cars, and I'm still fascinated by those, and I kind of the nostalgia type thing, this especially
yeah.
the early 70s, late 60s muscle cars, something about them. They just That's my way to kinda reset and get
Mhm.
back to rewind, the pre-Ozempic world, you know? Oh, I brought Ozempic up twice. I've said it 3 times already, but
Yeah,
that's just
with
I kinda wanna talk about that. I know, like, I don't know much.
no, I was gonna say that, talking about technology, it's
Mhm,
like, when it comes to, especially when it comes to like training and dieting and stuff, like I, for one, I'm just giving myself as an example here, but people probably think I'm a little weird, but if you went to the gym where I am and you looked around, I'm like the only one without any ear pods, um, or
mhm,
pre-workout shaker bottle. I go in there pretty raw. I don't have any earbuds in. I don't take a
mhm,
pre-workout. Um, I just kind of go in. I have my little workout notebook that I record my workouts in. It's a handwrite. Yeah, I know. And
mhm.
I train. And to me, training is the part that's what I'm there for, and I love it. And I don't want to bore you with how much I love training, but um, I don't need music. I don't need all these preparatory routines and rituals. People, I've seen kids come in. Anybody really? I've seen plenty of people come in and they forgot, for example, they forgot their pre-workout drink that day. I've seen them leave the gym and not come back that evening because they forgot their pre-workout. That to me, that's ridiculous. But I just like that. Just it's just me and when I train, it's me against me, and um, I don't worry about music or supplements or um, so many people on their phones and they're playing video games and all these kinds of things and stuff, and they're the ones that come up to me later and say, hey, how do I get lean, or how do I get strong, how do I get big, blah blah blah. And I'm like, see that thing in your hand, leave that in the car, like come here,
Yeah.
you know, put compartmentalize things. You know, you're here to the train, 45 minutes to an hour, train. That's it. You know, it's simple. Like you said, simple things in life that work and are effective are simple things. They're not complex. So, but that was just my 2 cents on
And
not putting down on anybody that
I
wants to listen to music or anything, but I find those things distracting.
and I agree. I don't practice what I preach as far as that goes, but um, I agree. I think that and there are times where I always have earbuds in when I'm at the gym working out, and part of the some of the time, or there's a percentage of the time where I'm not listening to anything or any music, but the earbuds in my ear, they send out a message saying, "Hey, leave me alone." And I am fortunate to go to a fitness center and to work out at a fitness center where I've met a lot of nice people, and there's people that understand, and they're like, "Look, we'll talk later, whether it's in the sauna or the cold tub, wherever it is. We'll talk later." But and there are some people that don't understand it. They just it's social hour. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I'm on the clock here. I have to get this done and then go. But yeah, I totally understand as far as that goes, and that's how. In I've been mistakenly, as an athletic trainer, right? The worst part about that profession, I guess you can say, is our name. Calling me an athletic trainer, which we're medical professionals, sports medicine. Something along those lines would have worked better as a name, because I've been asked thousands of times, "Hey, how do I get in shape?" Well, I know only from experience, or from what people have taught me about health and fitness, but I'm not a health and fitness expert. Um, while as my master's degree is in health, it's public health. It's just it has nothing to do with working out or the dieting part of it. And people have asked me that my entire life, and the answer that I give them is pretty similar to the answer you give them. Hey, look, you have to be consistent and follow a plan that's understandable, that you can understand. And getting a plan that you understand it's just as simple as talking to somebody who's an expert in it and knows how to communicate. And that, like, for you, I know that you taught strength and conditioning at the university that we uh, were employed by, and you did that. And students, I advised those students, about their collegiate path, and a lot of them were majors under my discipline, and they would talk about having you as a teacher, and talk about how, look, it's the main thing is the biggest thing, and it's not a class where you just go and show up. Attendance consistency, but you have to go and you have to participate and be consistent, and that's how you succeed in that class, because it's not you know it, it's just as my profession, it's not rocket science, right?
Mhm.
Where these people, these snake oil, these grifters online, they want you to think it's rocket science because they're the only pathway to success in health and fitness. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's a weird. I think I may have written an article about this actually, but I always say, like, of course, we're from the generation of just we went to the gym, we worked out with some friends, and we went home and we ate good food and we got bigger, stronger, etc. But I feel like I went to bed one night and I woke up and we're in this fitness influencer, TikTok, YouTube crazy world now where there's like everybody from an MD to a teenager that lives in his mom's basement are all giving advice, and it's wild. It's just it's a lot. It's so my point is my heart goes out to people who are new to all this stuff, whether it's weight training or CrossFit or running or any kind of fitness activity. Yeah, it can get incredibly confusing and complex and frustrating, and that's one of the things I do train some people on the side, face to face, and that's one of the first things I address with them is like, look, I know what you've been through, you know, because they
Yeah.
usually have gone through a series of hurdles, and now they're to me. they kind of ended up with me, right, at hiring me as a trainer. They've already been through like a year or two or more of just frustrating diets and training and this app and this program and this Instagram person and that they follow, and they've been all over the map, and then they kind of come to me as like a last resort. And I'm not saying I'm some miracle worker, but the first thing I try to stress to them is like, okay, let's breathe, let's take a breath, let's exhale a little bit,
Mhm.
let's wipe the slate clean, let's think in simple terms, and like you alluded to earlier about the complexities of you had mentioned Ozempic a couple of times. um you know it isn't that complicated because on a very topical level, people know, they really do know what to do. I mean, without even Googling, people just, are fruits and vegetables good for you, or is fast food good for you? Well, fruits and vegetables. I could probably give somebody about 20 questions and they can figure out their diet and workout on their own, just asking them those 20 questions,
Yeah.
and do you think working out twice a week's better, or is 4 times a week better? Or, little simple, really fundamental questions. And most people, they know the answers. They know lean proteins, fruits, vegetables, high fiber diet, all these kinds of things. And of course, all the diet gurus will probably hate all that because they say, no, you need to eat steak and nothing else. And broccoli's poisonous. And I've heard some pretty crazy things. But
Yeah, it's
bananas
like,
make you fat, and
what
it's like I try to tell people, it's like the world. We
yeah,
have a lot of obesity and overweight population in this country, and they're not. My running kind of joke is they're not getting overweight from bananas and oatmeal. They're getting they're doing bad stuff. They know they are too. They're
yeah.
not stupid. People aren't stupid. They know that
Yeah, and it's funny.
they need to, they know what's good for them and what's bad for them. People are smart.
Yeah, and then another thing is the supplement industry. When people ask me the biggest question when I worked with athletes, like the biggest question or the most common question that I would get wasn't, "Hey, why does my ankle hurt or why am I cramping up, during exercise or this?" It's, "Hey, is first of all, does this supplement work? And then second of all, is this safe? Well, like, will not safe for my health, but safe for like drug test purposes? I'm like, got this at GNC. Is this, and it was crazy. Is in college, I worked at GNC for, man, it was almost 4 years. And it was, I tell you, the supplement industry is crazy as far as that goes, because you know as well as I do, like you buy this bottle of something and it says what the ingredients are, but they don't have to. They're not regulated by the FDA, so it doesn't. The eggs that you buy are more regulated by the FDA than these supplements are. And it's funny how
Mhm.
I was talking to a friend recently about in Louisiana they just legalized being able to sell and purchase raw milk, and Bl that's crazy, huh? In one store, like, it at one point, very recently, it was illegal. You could go to jail for buying raw milk in Louisiana, or selling not really buying, but selling raw milk in Louisiana. And you can go in the same state to GNC, and you can buy, as I don't know what supplements. I haven't looked at any supplements lately, but when I was selling supplements, it was right at the end of the Fedra thing. I'm like, you can buy basically meth at GNC while you
Yeah.
couldn't buy or sell raw milk. It's crazy.
Right. And, even if, you know, I'm kind of stepping back a little bit, but even if, let's say, the supplements, even if they are regulated, let's say they're all legit, whatever, but, it still doesn't replace hard work, consistency, dedication, discipline, all those kinds of things. And, I remember a story. This guy, a nice guy, came into the gym and he kind of knew a lot of people there and hadn't seen him in months. And he comes in and he's like, "I've got all my supplements in. They came in the mail the other day." And I think he ordered something like $700 worth of supplements. And he was set. He was ready to go.
Jeez.
And he was like, I am ready." I've my supplements came in, I'm ready to go. I saw him for about 3 days, and I never saw him again for like 6 or 7 months after that. And so it's like, it's kind of like, do the shoes make you jump higher in basketball? It's the same principle. Like, do the supplements really? The supplements don't drive you to the
Yeah.
gym. The supplements don't, uh, do the squats for you, or all that good stuff. Go in and day out, and adhere to a diet, and adhere to working out hard, tracking your workouts, being consistent, progressive, all the stuff, all the boxes checked. Supplements don't do that for you. You know, I was just kind of, that was a really stark example of just how people rely so much, particularly in fitness, on supplements, and on all levels. Because it used to be, when I started training, the only people in the gym were us meatheads. We just went in, we wanted to lift and get big and strong and lean, and and have a good time. It was like a locker room, and
Yeah.
now everybody's in the gym now. I call them the doctors and lawyers. Everybody's
Mhm.
flooded into the gym, and everybody's taking supplements, and it's like everybody's joined in, which is great. But this, there's a reason the supplement industry keeps making more and more money every single year. I mean, it's in the billions,
Mhm.
probably, at least. So it's amazing,
And it always has been. Yeah. And finally, the pharmaceutical companies have they say, well, they're making some money over it. We're going to get into this too. And, that's and the reason why I brought up things like Ozempic in this episode is because I don't know much about it. I don't know about, and I've purposely kind of kept myself away from reading it because I look forward to in the very near future having a guest on who knows everything about it. And the only thing I know about it, I think I'm an expert at spotting Ozempic in the wild, you know, and some people are really good at hiding it because I believe and this is the person I'm going to talk to in the very near future speaks about how you have to work with it because if not, you're going to look sick. That's yes, you're going to lose weight on this medicine, but you're going to like if you don't put in the work to meet it halfway, you're going to look sick. And it's funny. I have that nickname. It's I think I got it off of The Walking Dead. It's called like a skin bag. I think that's what that you call that. You spot it in the wild and you see like somebody at the grocery store and man, you went hard on the Ozempic and you have to put in some work because that's going to negatively affect other parts of your health too. And look, I don't want to insult anybody on Ozempic, and I'm not necessarily against the use of it. I just, don't understand, and I look forward to understanding it in the near future. But
Well, it's
um,
kind of like AI, right? We're in the infancy of all this stuff.
yeah,
With whether it be pharmaceuticals or technology and things like that. So who knows? But anybody ever asked me about, I just say, just use with caution. Talk to your doctor. Get your blood tests.
hmm
Get all the checkups you need and stuff like that. And your doctor's going to know the best practice for you, and just listen to him or her. And yeah, like
of
I'm like
course,
you.
yeah,
I
yeah,
have
of
no
course. It's
experience with it, or little knowledge of it. And I know that the particular drugs have been around a long, long time, but they just more recently have been
uh
starting to be used for weight loss. So um, yeah, jury's out, I think, still.
it's like we can make money off of this, but yeah. So I have some notes here. We talked about a few things as far as this when we're talking about getting this podcast off the ground and the health and fitness industry. We talked about things like magazines and the internet and AI and I wanted to talk about you had this and it's crazy how this works out, but you talked about the 30,000 foot or is it foot? Yeah, 30,000 foot or feet view of
Mm.
health and fitness. And sometime later, it's one of the books I was reading about starting, like talking about content and creating content. They talked about the 30,000 foot view of I forgot what it was, but of content creation, and I'm like, either this is a coincidence or Brad read this book too, and I think you might have. It's the same author that we both is like, oh yeah, I've read stuff by this author before, and she's great, and but in here in the notes I have it says the 30,000 foot view of fitness and diets. Here, it's in the notes. It says trends, gurus, snake oil, and what really matters: circus versus reality. And I'm going to start this conversation out by, you know, one thing that my personality, I would go to you for advice, or as far as for training me if I had the goals, the health and fitness goals that you were, um, of the people, your clients that you work with. And man, I like that. Just shoot me straight, keep it simple, and tell me what I need to do, and how far can I venture off of this path, and you know I don't need to know how long it takes. I'm just going to follow this path until it takes me where it's going to take me. So I like that, keeping it simple part of that. And is that how you, with yourself, with your current health and fitness goals, whether it's like, is there something in the future you're looking at, or whether it's maintenance, is that what you do too? You still just keep it simple?
Yeah, I do, and I'll be honest, sometimes it is a struggle because, there is a lot of content out there. We get kind of punched in the face with a lot of things, whether we like it or not, and it's
Yeah.
easy to go into rabbit holes um, but I try not to do that, and I try my best to kinda, like, calm down, my technology habits and what I consume, for a lot of reasons, but at the same time, I try to keep an open mind with things. A lot of the the different workouts and different, whether it's exercise or technique or something like that that I did in my 20s or 30s, it's not going to work really as well today. So I have to kind of modify. So I'm always trying to modify and to change things up for the better. But you're right. It's like the overall view has to remain simple because um, when you start getting in the complexities, you're going to drive yourself crazy, and then you're eventually going. I almost guarantee you're eventually going to get burned out pretty easily. You're going to start hating it, possibly. So just keeping it simple, like you mentioned with writing, and I've read that many, many times too. It's like it's the content, dummy. It's have to ask yourself that. Like you could have all the
Mhm.
bells and whistles and the techniques and the SEO. We talked about search engine optimization and long
Yeah.
tail keywords and all these complexities, which are wonderful things or tools. They're real. They're not. They're real tools. But at the end of the day, are you writing something that people want to read? Are you informing them of something? Are you helping them? Those are the simple questions. Does this make sense that what I wrote? Or am I just filling it with keywords and search engine
Yeah.
stuff? But fitness, I mean, shoot, fitness is the same way. Diet's the same way. Like I said, the 20 questions given to somebody, like, hey, eat a diet of X, Y, and Z. Keep it that way. Do that for 6 months. See what happens. You know, but people want
I
to
I
hear
remember
complex. They want to hear complex secrets, quote unquote secrets. They want to hear some kind of
yeah.
trick or secret that that nobody else knows, and it's going to be easy. And all I have to do is pull the trigger, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not your guy for that.
Yeah, it's funny, man. You gave like, and it's funny. Fast forwarding like, or rewinding a year and change. Like I was thinking about writing a book, and you said, "Well, what's there to think about? Just write it," and lo and behold, yeah, it's funny like how a few months later I had a book published, and then it seems like I went to sleep another night, and right away I had another book published, and I with using advice that I think my dad could have given. He probably about other things in life before, just do this effing thing, like,
Right.
get out of my hair, just do it, and that's what I did. And it's just as simple. I guess you can tie that to health and fitness, where it's like, look, you want to accomplish your goals, just do it. write them down if that's what you do, or put them on the notes in your phone, which I despise the notes. I wish there was a way to erase it off of my phone because I try to use it. I listen to podcasts where people say they use the notes, they speak them. My wife
Mm,
uses notes. I hate that platform on my phone. I like to write it down.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
me
just
too. Yeah. No, yeah, it's, you know, I will say this though, I think a lot of people will probably describe themselves like this. You might be the same way, I don't know, but, I think I'm decent at giving advice, but I'm not really good at taking advice of my own advice, I should say.
Mhm.
Because they say always write the damn book, right? And then I'm sitting over here, I've got
Yeah,
2 books sitting there, not written, that I have an outline on,
yeah,
and one of them's half written and all that stuff. So I'm not taking my own advice on that front, and it's tough sometimes. I say that kind of tongue in cheek, um, but yeah, when you're the outsider looking in, it's kind of easy to see things, and that I do. This is a very random uh, trail here, but it just reminded me of when I used to work in wellness centers for hospitals. And wellness centers, of course, are they attract a lot of the older population. It's a more calm down type of fitness center.
yeah. Your
It's not
feed
your
just
big
broke up a little bit on there. You're talking about when you worked in wellness, right?
yeah, wellness centers for different hospitals and stuff. So they have a
Mhm.
lot of older generations that work work out in there and everything. So, but you just reminded me of they give the best advice because they've lived through things. They've lived through wars and depressions and all kinds of different things. And I would come in there, like a problem, a personal problem, relationships or whatever, and they had the simplest but
Yeah,
best answers ever. So yeah, it just reminded me of that because a lot of times the simplest answers are the best ones. They're not. It doesn't take a degree to follow a simple advice. You just follow it. You know.
yeah. You just, or even just sleep on it. That's some,
Yeah.
man. That's hard as a young person too. That was hard advice to take. Just hey, just chill out. All right, you have
Yeah.
time. You know.
That was the best advice probably my wife had ever given me when we got together was I'd have a decision on a job or something, and I always thought I had to decide then and there. Like I have to jump in this opportunity. It's going to
Hmm.
go away. It's a scarcity mentality, right? It's going to go away. I'm never going to see it again. It's probably the best thing ever
Yeah,
happened, and you grandiose it. And then she's like, no, just sleep on it. I'm like, that's weird. And
yeah,
it starts working better because you're not in that hyperactive mindset. You kind of calm down a little bit, relax. Maybe you need some sleep, right? Um, and one of a professor
yeah.
friend, a mutual professor friend of ours, used to tell me that all the time. He's a sports psychologist, and anytime I had a big decision or anything, he's like, "Okay, did you get sleep? Are you eating enough food?" Because I'd be in the middle of
Uh-huh.
dieting for a bodybuilding show or something and very little calories. And he's like, are you eating enough? Are you sleeping enough? Like he'd always ask me those things. So just wait. He's like, just wait. Don't make a decision, an irrational decision. Just wait on it. So yeah,
Yeah,
great
and that's,
advice.
man. I would tell students all the time. It because we were working around athletes all the time, and I was teaching students how to work with athletes, and it would I would tell them, look, you're training basically to be an athlete. This has to consume your life. By that, it means that your whole life isn't athletic training, but it's everything else has to be in order. Whether it's family, financial, relationships, health, all of those things, they go in with you at this point, learning and then actually becoming a true professional. It just it all works together. It all works together, and that's one of the rules we had in our program was the fraternization with athletes. Don't go party with them, don't get in relationships with them, and it's because what you're doing is you're melding two things that should be separate, right? But they should be also healthy parts of your life. So and it's hard to explain that to a young
Mhm.
person, to a college student.
Yeah,
But
especially when they get in
but
those
yeah, man.
positions.
Well, let's talk about.
No, I was just gonna
Yeah,
say, especially when they get in those positions because they come from, they're young and then they all of a sudden they're working with the university football team, for example, let's say. And
yeah,
there's a sense of a lot of pride. There's a lot of, which is great, right? They're excited. They basically came from high school and college. Now they're working with like this team and they're on the field and they're in the action and it's exciting. So yeah, it's look, we can look back now and see 2020, but we've all been there, right? We've all kind of like been caught up in excitement and whatever we're doing, and we all make mistakes, and it's like, I should have done that better. Should have
yeah,
should have not as spent as much time here or there as I did or whatever. But that's just the learning curve, right? So
yeah. It's funny how that how that works, and I yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that. This is you being the first episode of a podcast. It's probably on my part. Until you hit record, it's not going to be the best. On my part, I'm not talking about your part. But like it's just it's one of those things where you're like, all right, should I talk right now, or you know, can I wish there was like a kind of like those metrics on there, but we're just like looking at each other, just like it's a conversation, just like we usually have. You know, um,
well, I think it'd be great if, which I'm sure you'll cover eventually at some point in time. But I think it'd be great if your audience could comment on whatever platform they're listening to this on, and hey, pick out the parts here that you want to hear more of. Like what are some things you want to expand on and all that good stuff. Because um, we can talk about fitness, health, nutrition, motivation, 80s movies, you know,
yeah,
education. There's a tons and tons and tons of. I think which aside from the 80s movie, well, no, I'll throw the 80s movies in there. They're all related, right? But
yeah. Ex-
it's all about life, and but I would personally be very interested in hearing from them, whoever's listening. You know, what's their big question?
yeah, and that's what this podcast is. I know we're starting off with the health and fitness part, right? But in the invitation that I sent you, the introduction email, look, I have many interests, and you know, rather than me sitting, most of the time boring my wife with different, I told her the origination I explained the origination of what, because she said talking about big wigs, like and I said, oh well, that's wigs are really expensive, and most of the people in that time needed wigs because they had syphilis. There's a rampant syphilis, and that was pre penicillin, right? So they had to buy wigs because their hair was falling out, and the wigs, the bigger the wig, the more money you had. So
Yeah,
that's why they call people big wigs. And she's like, you could have just said,
that's
she's
interesting. I never knew
like, you
that.
could have just said, uh, yeah, that's looks, and that's a big part of my interests go into history. Also, I'm a huge history fan, and I really think that if like I could have seen myself in history or teaching history at some point, or researching history, and things like that. But I'll like say stuff like that, or I'll be watching a movie. I'm like, that didn't happen. You know,
Yeah.
talking about. I was like, no, that didn't happen. It's a cool movie, but that didn't happen. Um, but yeah, history, entertainment, things like that. One thing I want to do on every episode, you know, is I want to have a Mount Rushmore of something. We play this
Oh.
game because I always think about, and I watch these sports shows too, and they say, let's talk about the Mount Rushmore of NBA stars. So in this one, we're going to talk about the Mount Rushmore of bodybuilders. All right. So we have four people, and you can say two honorable mentions too if you want, but your
Woo.
your top four.
Oh my gosh.
And look, this isn't like uh, you have to separate. You have to have a combination of your favorite and the best, right? It's because you can
Yeah.
say Mount Rushmore. Well, if you look at the statistics, this person had
Yeah.
this many Olympias. This one had this. No, like your favorite, your Mount Rushmore.
Well, I'm incredibly biased here, but of course Arnold, he would be probably like top left or whatever facing. um, oh
He'd be George
wow,
Washington, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
The founder. I have to throw in
And look,
just
we can alternate. Like he's my number one too, for sure.
yeah,
Much to God rest my mother's soul. He's my favorite too. So as far as that goes,
yeah, bodybuilding, digging deep. I'd have to put up. Uh, I'm gonna jump around a little bit with eras here, but Lee Haney.
Mhm.
Um, and the
Oh
reason
yeah.
there is I'm just a big fan of course, Arnold's era, the golden era. Even before that, big fan of the '60s and some of the '50s. But Lee Haney was more or less in the '80s, and but he still encompassed that skinny waist, V taper, athletic looking body that was just people admired it. And, I don't want to get too deep into today's guys, but, a lot of guys today are just massive and that's it. There's no rhyme or reason to their physique. They're just the big mountains of muscle. There's not, I'm being a little critical,
Mhm.
sorry, but to me, there's nothing that unique today about a lot of the guys. So Arnold Lee Haney, and not because they're both Mr. Olympias, like you said. It's not because of the statistics or
Mhm.
number of wins, the metrics of it all. But I just think that Lee, um, growing up with Lee, you saw his personality. He was just a good person, and a family man and
He
everything.
was that first like color magazine. Like when the magazines when they started to go in like real colorful and they had like the spandex era with the
Yeah,
the other
and yeah,
the
and
workout
Lee
boots and all of
was.
those things.
I
Like he
saw countless interviews with Lee, and he was always smiling. He was even when he was dieted
Mhm.
down to the last speck of body fat and probably feeling tired and miserable. The man was smiling from ear to ear. Always, I met
He
him.
still is. I'm on his
Yeah,
Facebook page. Yeah,
yeah, met him several times at expos. He's just a nice, just wonderful person, wonderful human being. Anyways, so I'm a little biased on that. um,
that's awesome to
oh
meet Lee Haney. Yeah, he
yeah,
was the
he's great.
first. Like as far as bodybuilding goes, he was the first for me too. I was like, man, this guy,
He was
Lee
amazing. I
Haney.
mean,
That's Lee Haney.
he
But
wasn't the biggest. He wasn't this, the whatever, but because you had guys come after him that were massive and all that, Dorian Yates and Ronnie Coleman and stuff. And but I don't know, Lee's very just I would say classy, just very a class act of a person. Um, three, wow, I'll have to throw in Dave Draper. He's more of a '60s guy, but he was never Mr.
mhm.
Olympia. He was Mr. Universe, Mr. America. He was slated to become sort of the next
Dave
big
Matthews
thing.
Band. Dave Matthews Band. Deep cuts only.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
um,
the roller rink scene on The Office. Look, I'm a
yeah.
you're gonna. I know as just as much as you're a huge fan of The Office. Look at my logo here. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
huge fan. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
That and
But
Parks and
anyway,
Rec.
yeah, it's a
Those
deep
two.
cut, man. Dave Draper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dave Draper.
yeah.
Well, he did play Hercules in a couple of early movies, and he was on like the Beverly
Mhm.
Hillbillies. He was on a lot of different. I think he was on Lucille Ball. Arnold was on Lucille Ball show too at one point. But they were these guys. That was the era in the '60s that they started breaking into Hollywood a little bit, just as cameos, just as kind of background characters. But
Mhm.
I just thought his body was again ideal. He didn't have these massive tree trunk legs. He was very athletic looking. He kind of looked like me a little bit. It was a tall blonde guy, slim build and stuff, and he just had a wonderful physique. And the fourth, wow, the fourth. Um, Whew. I'm gonna just from sheer just he was like a beast back then. He's just sheer dominance with Sergio Oliva, um, Arnold's rival. His probably his most heated rivalry, and it was just amazing to see some old footage, read about all this different things about the early '70s, the rivalry between those two, and all that. And he was just they called him the Myth because he just had the biggest
Yeah,
arms, tiniest waist. And
it's like the
another
Python
great
pose.
thing,
You know, he had the
yeah, another
yeah.
sort of deep cut criteria here is if you looked at like Sergio Oliva's training, it's insane. It's not like he wasn't like
Hmm.
he was a power lifter by trade. Like he was a sheet metal worker. He defected from Cuba, became a police officer in Chicago, but he was a competitive power lifter before he got into bodybuilding. So he's an incredibly strong guy, and he used to actually power lift in a junkyard back home in Cuba with made up weights and all this stuff. So
Wow,
just a very just
wow.
raw upbringing. I mean, just but I respect that incredibly. And but just to see some of these old guys' practices and diets and routines and stuff, it's like there's no science to it. It's just they went in there and they got after it, and then they went home and ate and slept, and it was amazing. And I would love to be a fly on
Did
the
it again.
wall back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
Wait, yeah.
I don't know about honorable mentions, but that would be another. That's a tough one. I don't know who else would you
It
put up there?
so number one's Arnold for me. Number two would be Ronnie.
Hmm.
Um, look, he's from Louisiana. I know that the amount of like the which he's candid about the drug use in the sport. Yeah, I get it, but he's the one guy I can look at and say, well, look, he could have not won the Olympias that he won, but naturally he could have gotten pretty close. Not nearly as close as big as he got, but he was just genetically and then his
Yeah,
work ethic. So he's number two, man. And again, I know you can list the amount of Olympias or people. It's that for me. It's not that. It's like I look at physique and I toiled with this one. So number three for me is Jay Cutler. Just not just because of his career, but also of being an ambassador of the sport. And I've never met him, but everybody, I've yet to talk to somebody who's met him, whether it's an expo or just in passing, that's had a
yeah.
bad thing to say about him.
I've
You
I've
know,
met him several times in the expo and the Olympia, and very nice guy. And the funny thing is, I'll show you a really quick story. But a buddy of mine moved to Vegas for work, and he was working out one day, and it was the few months after Jay had lost the title to Dexter Jackson that
mhm,
one year. I forgot what year it was, but um, and he started talking to my friend, and he says, and Jay's like, "You want to work out together?" And so they started working out together, and then they started
wow,
because Jay was my. This is from my friend's. This is his words. He said Jay was contemplating retiring after that loss. He's like, "Well, I won the
mhm.
Olympia. I've been at this for years. I've got two
I beat
titles."
Ronnie finally, and then yeah,
Yeah, he kind of did everything he needed to do, and my buddy's like, no, like do you want to get after it again? Do you want to redeem yourself? Do you want to get the title back? So he kind of was instrumental. My friend was instrumental in sort of getting his motivation back and getting his mojo back into the competitive mindset. And I've talked to my friend many times since then, and he's like,
mhm,
yeah, Jay's like he's very very genuine. There's no fake, you know, persona, or he's a businessman, absolutely. Probably first and foremost a
mhm.
businessman. And but just a very genuine guy, very nice guy. So yeah, that would be my
Well, I think he
honorable
grew up.
mention.
I mean, yeah, I can't have a list without mentioning him. And then, man, the fourth one for me is I would have to. I'd have to put Lee Haney on there just because of past, but it's between him and my first honorable mention, who I think's my favorite physique of all time, is Kevin Levrone. You know, the Maryland Muscle Machine. He
Mhm.
never won Olympia, right? He came close, and I think he won Arnold. But his physique was probably my favorite of all time.
He
You
he
know,
was a genetic freak too. He only
yeah,
trained. I've heard that he only trained roughly, I don't know, 4 or 5 months out of the year. After Olympia, he
yeah,
would take off like 6 months, completely from the gym. Just
wow,
and his genetics, even when he came back at 50 something years old, for that
yeah.
one time, a few years ago, he was incredible. Like, he had just a few months under his belt of training. That was it, and he just blows up. I mean, yeah, like you mentioned
Yeah,
with
he
Ronnie,
said
it's
he was
like
gonna do it.
you can talk pharmaceuticals all day, but you know, you're not going to be Ronnie Coleman or Kevin Levrone, with average genetics. So
No, yeah, no,
yeah, Levrone was
yeah. It's
incredible. He's incredible.
man, I gotta pick. Yeah, and
I'm
now
surprised you hadn't
this
said
is
Chris Bumstead. He's
this.
trending right now.
But you know what, man? He's more of the physique. Like it's kind of like an evolution. Like we're cycling back a little bit. I like his physique a lot more than I do. You know, other people who I'm fans of them as people. But you look at somebody like Kai Green, like when he was in his prime, or crap, my mind's blank. Who's
Phil
the
Heath.
multiple time Olympia during? Yeah, and look, they were great, but like just to my eye, the physique, I like that the Bumstead physique a lot better than those.
Mhm. I
Um,
agree. Yeah, and that's probably why I kind of harken back to the old 60s and 70s. Dave Draper. He would be a men's physique guy
mhm.
today, right? Or class. I'm sorry, classic physique. He would be in the
Yeah,
Bumstead category today. So I really do. I'm like you. I take to those physiques a lot better. But I'm still impressed. Like, nothing taken away from. I mean, Ronnie Coleman's impressive. He's you know, there's only going to be, it kind of like they used to say years ago. There's only one Arnold. There's only one Ronnie. There's not going to be another Ronnie
yeah,
Coleman ever again.
yeah. It's funny. Yes. Speaking of Arnold, the whole Arnold versus. Let's go to '80s movies, right? The whole Arnold versus Stallone thing. And I was in the Stallone camp because I had to. I would have gotten kicked out of my house if not growing up. So, um, but I was a fan of both. And man, those two guys ruled the '80s. They just ruled the '80s, and they would try to. I think, and they had a real rivalry. And what's
Hmm.
crazy is they're best of friends now, but they had a real rivalry, and it was so great that they had that rivalry because they would just try to one up each other each movie. More, and that was the '80s, right? We were trying to beat Russia, and
Yeah,
we were like,
and
it was like that.
at the end of the day, the audience won. I mean, they pushed each other to make
Yeah.
better movies, to make more action, to try different things, and we the audience won in the end. We reaped all the benefits.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
so it was great.
Man, the physiques of those times, just with those two guys. That's what that they're 1 and 1A. I don't. I mean, I don't know. Depending on what your definition of a better, those two guys were just like they were the champions of that, and they both inspired so many people to better their lives.
Well, yeah, and two is like you'd
It's just
mentioned the '80s movies. The '80s are very different than today. Of course, today everything's kind of is sort of CGI driven. It's more character driven versus actor driven. Because I remember as a kid
Mhm,
or whatever, and I'd go to the Arnold movie to see Arnold. I didn't care what he was doing in a movie. I didn't
mhm,
care what character he was playing. I didn't care it didn't matter. It was, I'm going to go to the movie to see Arnold, or I'm going to go to the movie to see Stallone. That's what you went to the movie for.
mhm.
And it's like they encompassed.
Yeah,
It didn't matter what they were doing. They were in the movies. You go to the movies and
yeah,
see them. But yeah, today it's very different. But man, they carried. You know, of course, I'm a huge Arnold fan, and I love little
Mhm,
behind the scenes trivia. And they have this one little trivia fact about Conan the Barbarian, and when they, of course, Arnold
mhm,
repeatedly talks about this story about like when John Milius was casting. He says, if we don't have Arnold, we'd have to build
mhm.
one because there weren't a bunch of Arnolds running around in Hollywood. Everybody was these skinny, dramatic actors, and so they said Arnold's perfect. He's already built. He's built in, right? And
Brad,
so
Brad,
another funny thing is
you
is
gotta
hmm?
wait, you gotta rewind. You gotta do it. You gotta do it for me, man. You
what
gotta do it.
what line?
I'm putting you on the spot. No, the Bill Arnold's, you gotta do it.
What like the accent?
About what John Milius said. Yes, yes, you got
Uh,
to.
oh, what Arnold's description? Yeah, he said, if we didn't have Arnold, we'd have to build one. But
Dude,
the
you're the
funny,
best. Look,
another, an-
I've tried.
another funny thing, the little bit of trivia was it was really interesting is they had when they cast for Conan the sort of the enemies, they needed imposing figures to actually challenge
Mhm,
Conan, the character. So they got Sven Thorson, who's like 6'4", probably like 280 pounds at the time, big guy, Arnold's friend. And another guy, I
mhm,
cannot remember his name offhand, but he's like 6'8", huge. The Barbarian brothers in the movie, the two brothers
mhm,
that James Earl Jones' character had hired on, and James Earl Jones was a tall guy. He was a big, tall, kind of
mhm,
imposing figure. So it was interesting that the director, he's like, I have Conan. He's big. He's a big guy. Now I need even bigger guys to challenge him. So it
mhm.
was it was cool to kind of read or hear about that, like how they cast everybody in the movie. You know,
Yeah, it's funny, and nowadays you just have man, there's the guy, and he's a good actor. He's entertaining. The guy in the Twisters movie, like that's like him, the Chris Pine, like that's the modern day action hero, which is it's
yeah.
a breath of fresh air when speaking of Parks and Rec, right? It's a breath of fresh air when you see somebody like oh, what geez,
Oh, Chris
Parks and
Pratt,
Rec. Yes, geez, my brain,
one
yeah,
of the
but Chris
Chris's.
Pratt, right? You see somebody like him, it's he could have survived in the 80s
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But like I
because you
said,
had,
it's just there were imposing figures, even like
mhm,
you know whether they were huge or not, physically. I mean, in, both actors, Arnold and Stallone, they fluctuated their weights for different types of movies and stuff, and
mhm,
then but they just had this overwhelming kind of huge presence in a movie. It was very when you saw them on screen. I remember as a kid, and I was actually on a trip with the military one time, and I went to the base theater to go watch an Arnold movie had just come out. I can't remember the name of the movie, but and once the titles come up and the credits, and then the words Arnold Schwarzenegger comes up on the screen, people applauded.
mhm,
I mean, like that's how much impact a
yeah.
lot of these big '80s guys had. They were forces back then. And you can say a little bit about that today with some stars. I mean, I think there's some stars that I still love to go see, but for their acting abilities and stuff
But
like that.
anytime one of those stars, like a big example lately is Michael Keaton, right?
Yes,
He's a
yeah,
guy that you don't see, and he comes back. I'm going to see his movie.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
Michael Keaton movie. You
Right,
know,
exactly, exactly. And I'm kind of like that with George Clooney and Brad Pitt, and those are sort of your very like classic movie stars, for the real like movie star. They are it. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that's just kind of content. It's just another comic book or some, you know, I don't know. It's just it's kind of
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that are a little lackluster today. But again, I'm going to sound like Luddite when I say that, but like an old person. But I don't know.
Hey man, it's we have a lot to talk about. And look, I this is just an introductory. This is numero uno, the first episode, and my goal for this podcast, and I know myself, and I'm going to be completely transparent, is that I know, and I've read right that most podcasts don't make it past 6 episodes. So I'm going to record 6 episodes with people in succession so that I get past the six. And hey, statistically, we're surviving here, and
Well, on the seventh, then I'm going to make a plan to
yeah.
guarantee your success. I'm going to interview you on the seventh episode.
All right. Yeah,
So
that's,
that
I
guarantees you
think
get
by,
over that 6 episode hump.
yeah. And my goal is just like, our students or former students or just like clients, my goal is to get better at this. You
Hmm.
may listen to this and have some notes, and I want to see them. I want you to comment on them. I want, and that's as viewers or as listeners, that's what I want. I want to get better. I want to improve because I feel that this is something that I could improve on, and this could, it has that very small potential to be successful. And what's successful? It's being able to just continue to talk to people, and I want you as a recurring guest, even if it is you having me talk about myself for an hour.
Yeah.
But look, we have a lot to talk about. It's not
Yeah.
just about health and fitness. You and I have many interests. And we both read a lot. We're both observant. And that's one thing you told me is and I tried this, it's hard. The last time I went to an airport, I tried not to have any type of screen or sound stimulation,
Hmm.
electronic sound stimulation. I just sat there and I watched people, and that's a show, man.
Yeah.
That's a show.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, man, congratulations. Um, Hope this is one of many. And
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you helping me go walk through the speed bumps, and
yeah.
just to help me to press record. And I appreciate you sharing your parts of your story, and there's a lot more to it. Maybe we can analyze certain parts of it, and I'll open up about mine too. And
Hmm. Hmm.
this is one of these things is talking and listening, and that's something I think this world is short of as far as a skill. Even me, I admit it. Like trying not to talk over you or talk over anybody. I think that this helps. People have a story, and you know, even if you don't find parts of it interesting, you may think later that, hey, look, this is, I get it. I get it.
Hmm.
But anyway, do you have anything else
No, no, we'll
to
just save it
bring
for
up
the
for
next one.
episode one?
Yeah, we'll save it for the next one.
Hey, well, this is the Phantom Menace,
Yeah.
right? This isn't a New Hope, right?
Right.
This is a Phantom Menace, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, I know we have it's funny, we have a a close friend of both of ours that you and him are more like, you're bigger fans of Star. I'm a Star Wars fan, but not as much as y'all. And I sit back
Mhm.
and listen to y'all talk, and when we all three talk, and I'm like, man, this is deep. I didn't think about these movies as much as I should have, I
Yeah.
guess. But anyway, I'm gonna end this with yeah, go you know, is it all right if I announce your website here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just it's simple. Just bradborland.com, and I'll put it on the information. I'll put the link on the information, and go visit. And there may be some things. I know there's links to some of your writing. Also, you uh, have clients that you train in person and online, and you know feel free to go on there and research. I think that you have a gift for this, and that's why we talked about it so much this first episode of the health and fitness. You know, you are the guy I would talk to. Like, I guess when my running career is over in, was it 9 days, I might be picking your brain, to
Yeah,
because I'm gonna have to find a way to not
bring it on.
get fat. Um, and that's gonna be my goal, not to get on stage, but just to not be
Mhm.
fat. And to feel good. You know, but Brad, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, man.
And
Appreciate it.
thanks
Had
for
fun.
taking time out of your day. And awesome. Thanks, man.
All right.
Thanks everybody for listening, and look forward to speaking to you again sometime soon.
All right, man.
Bye.
Have a good one.